Hello everybody, welcome to the channel. My name's Owen, and last night I had a realisation. That realisation was that I used to be a heavy drug addict, I used to be a gambling addict, and I'm fully sober now. And I've stopped gambling, I haven't gambled, I haven't betted in months. And yeah, I shared some of these stories and these experiences on my social media, and to my surprise, these stories actually resonated with a lot of people. And it made me realise that I've got so much knowledge and experience that I'm just keeping to myself, and I want to share that with you, and that's what this whole channel is about. This first video is going to be an introduction to myself. It's going to be a bit of history on my background, my addictions, and yeah, it's going to be very hard for me to open up about this stuff, but I feel ready now. The reason that I do feel ready is because I know I've changed as a person and made so many changes that have made me a different person today. So my name's Owen, I'm 24 years old, and growing up I was very spoiled as a child. I had everything I wanted. I had £1,000 motorbikes for Christmas, I had loads of guitars, electronics, TVs, games, CDs, DVDs. I was taken to concerts whenever I wanted, would go to shows, would go on holidays, all these kind of things, and it was to the point I was so spoiled that if I got the wrong colour motorbike for Christmas, for example, I'd complain and I'd cry so much that it'd be taken back. So my parents divorced when I was 13 years old, and it was the first time I saw my parents cry, which affected me a lot. And because my mum and dad were together when I was spoiled, when they broke up, went from having everything to nothing, and not nothing, we still had a roof over our head, things like that. I went from being always told yes and having everything I wanted to cut down massively. And at that age, I didn't understand the bigger picture, I didn't understand what was going on. All I knew is that all these things had been taken from me, so I started acting out. I started stealing from my family. I remember taking money from my mum's purse so many times. I stole off my dad, my stepdad, my stepmum. I stole off my whole family, my siblings. I would take my mum's bank card, I'd go on FIFA, I'd order takeaways, I'd steal money, not just cash but on the card also. So in this pursuit for more money, because I'd been used to having everything all my life, I then went on after the stealing to selling all my belongings. So I sold all my guitars, I sold TVs, DVDs, games consoles, clothes, and I went from having all these possessions and great things around me to not really having anything other than the bare minimum. With all this money that I'd gained from these things, I'd just buy takeaways, I'd waste it on games, on FIFA, but I was always just chasing that next money, that next high. Then I got old enough to start getting in with a group of friends. I started smoking cigs, I started smoking weed, I started doing ecstasy pills, other drugs, cocaine, ketamine, started selling drugs at some point, and I remember most of the time I sold drugs, it were pills and it were other people, so I were in debt for them. And I remember getting robbed once, and it wasn't violent or anything like that, but I got robbed by a big group of lads, and that was so intimidating and absolutely knocked my confidence and my self-esteem out of me. And yeah, these pills that I had robbed off me, they weren't even mine in the first place. Like I said, I was in debt for them. And yeah, that's when I was around 17. And then I'd be at home. I had pills on me all the time, so I'd be at home, and then I started taking ecstasy pills, just sat in my room on my own. It'd be like a Wednesday night. I'd take pills, I'd sit on my bed till the sun came up, just listening to music on my phone. So yeah, all kinds of addictions: weed, ketamine, cocaine, acid, ecstasy, and I think weed was one of the worst. I kind of lost my whole personality through smoking weed, and there's another video coming that's completely about me losing my personality on weed, and yeah, that was a real eye-opener. And with these addictions, this stealing, obviously there was a lot of havoc being caused at home. I ended up moving out of my dad's because there was so much going on there. When I turned 19, my mum kicked me out, and fortunately I knew some guys who had a uni house and all this, so I moved into theirs. However, the only room that they had was a spare room, and it was kind of the washing room, so it didn't have a bed. So I slept on a laminate floor in their house for about 6 months, I think, and then someone moved out who lived upstairs, so I moved in, and then I had a bed and all this. But yeah, that didn't do my back any good, sleeping on that laminate floor. And because I was sleeping on this laminate floor and all this had gone on at home and in the past, I started smoking a lot of weed. I smoked about 500 pounds of weed a month. I'd buy an ounce for 200 quid. An ounce, if you don't know, is 28 grams. 28 grams is 28 tenner deals or 10 bags. I smoked the ounce within a week. I'd have run out of money by this point, so I'd message drug dealers, anyone that I can, and I'd be like, can you lend me this till the end of the month? And then that time had come around, and I made some really, really bad decisions gambling whilst I lived in this house also, and I think it was all part of chasing the high and just trying to escape the fact that I'd been kicked out and I was sleeping on this laminate floor, and my life was such a mess at that time. This is when the gambling got really bad. I already gambled, and I'll tell you about that in another video again, but when I was living with these guys, I was working at a call centre and I got paid about £1,300 a month, £1,300, and on payday twice I gambled away and lost my whole wage, £1,300. And I remember that morning I was looking forward to getting paid, but because I had so much to pay out for drugs and rent and all this, I just wanted to make more. So I woke up on payday and I put £700 on loads of football games that I had no idea about. And I remember being sat in work with £700 on a bet, and I was on call to a customer working at an O2 call centre. I was looking at my phone with £700 bet on, and this goal didn't come in, and oh my god, I literally feel anxious talking about it, and I was absolutely dreadful. But obviously I'd lost 700 quid, so I came off of this call, I went into the toilet, I put the rest of the money on, and I lost my wage. And definitely the closest I've ever come to ending my life, because you can't even comprehend the pure devastation that I felt knowing that I just worked a full month and gambled my entire wage. And yeah, it was just so upsetting. And I didn't learn from that. I went and did that again, but this time I didn't go into work. I sat at home and I did it in my room. And again, I'm very fortunate that I didn't end my life, because that was probably the closest with me being sat on my own and all that. And yeah, that I had to take loans out to pay rent and to pay everything back and things like that. And that's still things that are catching up with me today, but still things that I'm working on and things that I'm improving. But yeah, from that, the addictions got worse. Obviously, I just carried on smoking more weed. I'd go to work stoned, I'd wake up at 7 in the morning, I'd smoke a joint, I'd smoke all day at work. Then I started taking prescribed painkillers, which I'd buy off just street dealers like Xanax. That's more anxiety and depression medication, I believe. Started taking Xanax, diazepam, tramadol. I'd crush the Xanax pills up and roll them into joints with weed and smoke them. God knows what that was doing to my body or my mind, but I was just always trying to find ways to get more high and to just forget about what was actually going on in my life. And while you're high, you can't really deal with your problems, in my opinion that is. You can't deal with your problems head on, and yeah, you're always taken away in some fancy world. So yeah, then after this year, I moved home and I'd changed quite a bit about myself, because by the end of this year, I'd cut down smoking a bit. I started to respect my mum more, because living on my own made me appreciate the little things that she did for me, and the cooking and the washing and the cleaning, because when you start doing that stuff yourself, you realise how much of a task it actually is, so it makes you really appreciate the fact that someone else did that for you at some point. So she let me move back home and I went for a few more jobs. By this point I'd had 14, maybe 15 jobs, and I've been sacked from every single job that I've ever had, just from not turning up, or just being lazy, or being high on drugs. So I was living at home for a bit, I went for a few jobs, and then I decided that I wanted to do something else, because I could not stop smoking weed for the life of me. It was wrecking my relationship with my mum, it was wrecking my finances, all my other relationships. I couldn't stop doing that, I couldn't stop sniffing ket, all of that. So I decided I needed a change, and I applied for university. Bear in mind, I had no college education. I got kicked off my college course after 2 months, but I wanted to do music, a creative course. I applied, thank the Lord, I got in. Yeah, so I moved to university. I lived with a girl from Bristol for the first year. Some things wrecked our relationship, mainly my own fault due to drugs and money and gambling. I'll tell you more about that in another video, but yeah, don't really speak to her now, which is a real shame, because we had an amazing bond before I messed it up. And went to uni, still smoking weed, still doing drugs, cigs. But whilst I was in my first year, I applied some habits which kind of took me on a bit of a healthier path. So I started yoga for the first time, started meditating, started cooking, I started going to the gym. And all the underlying addictions were there, but they weren't quite as destructive, and I was starting to live a bit of a healthier lifestyle. And then I met a girl at uni, and I kind of sacked off uni and all my friends for her. She cheated on me. I decided to move in with her, even knowing that she cheated on me. I thought that trust could come back, but most of the time, you don't realise until it's too late. At this point, I kind of had to stop smoking weed, because I had to properly deal with the fact that I'd been cheated on and try and rebuild this trust and try and build confidence back in myself. But it was just torture. It was so hard for me to do that. Living with this girl that had cheated on me, it was amazing in ways. It was the best bond I've ever had with anyone to this day, and I'm so grateful for the experience. It was the first time I'd experienced love for the first time. We went on holidays, went to Rome, we went to Amsterdam, and she helped me out in more ways, and I'm forever grateful for that. However, it was also the most painful experience I've ever been through, and I feel like when you're going through a really painful time, you've got to make some changes, and you've got to kick yourself up the arse, or you're really going to suffer. So I cut the weed down, I stopped that. I incorporated some more habits on top of the yoga. I started getting in cold showers. I started doing breathing exercises after reading so much into how they're better for you. That started from a guy called Wim Hof, and Wim Hof is someone that I keep in touch with to this day. And I had a FaceTime call with Wim Hof, which was a life-changing experience, and I'm going to tell you all about that in another video. But yeah, I lived with her. Not only did we live together with this broken trust, we then broke up and had to live together for about 3 months for a breakup. And yeah, it was just an incredibly painful experience, but a lot of change came out of that. I stopped gambling from that because I couldn't even think about anything else other than the fact that I needed to heal. I stopped smoking weed. We stopped doing other drugs. We had a bit of a drink on that, don't get me wrong. But yeah, then after that, we went our own ways. I moved into my own place. She moved into her own place. And yeah, ever since that, I've been single. I've been alone. That was about 6 months ago. And I haven't gambled in over 6 months. I haven't smoked a cig in months. I've had no drugs, no weed, nothing. A little bit of psychedelics, but I'll tell you more about that in another video. And yeah, I just feel the youngest I've ever felt. I feel the happiest, the most content, and you wouldn't believe the amount of time and effort that I've put into sorting my life out and getting rid of these addictions, these habits, and just becoming a better person in general. That was just a quick overview of my story. The next video, I'm going to tell you a bit more about my actual drug addiction in depth and the different drugs and what they can do to you. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, if you have to this point, and if you're interested in improving your life or hearing about addiction or things that you can do to help yourself, then subscribe, like, comment one of your experiences. I always love having a chat and hearing about other people's stories, and yeah, it makes me smile. I love that stuff. So leave a comment if you've got any stories yourself. Thank you so much for watching, and I will definitely see you in the next video.